In the pre-dawn stillness of February 28, 2026, something extraordinary happened over the skies of Iran. There was no warning, there was no declaration, there was only the low, almost imperceptible whisper of jet engines traveling at 50,000 feet. Aircraft so advanced that no radar in the Iranian military had the capacity to find them. What followed in the next 12 hours would rewrite the geopolitical map of the Middle East and send the Islamic Republic into a state of shock it had never before experienced in its 47-year history. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber is unlike any weapon system ever built. Designed in the shadows of the Cold War and refined over 4 decades, it carries a radar cross-section roughly equivalent to that of a small bird, making it effectively invisible to the surface-to-air missile systems that Iran had spent billions of dollars constructing. Each aircraft costs over $2 billion to produce. The United States possesses only 21 of them, and they are based exclusively at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. When those planes move, the world listens, because the missions they fly are not exercises. They are endings. The story of how Iran found itself staring down the barrel of American air power in the spring of 2026 did not begin overnight. It began with decades of defiance, with centrifuges spinning underground in mountain facilities buried beneath tens of meters of reinforced concrete. With ballistic missiles stockpiled in tunnel complexes the Iranians had openly boasted could survive any conventional strike. The Islamic Republic had calculated that depth and hardness would be its ultimate deterrent. That calculation was about to be tested, and it would fail catastrophically. The immediate prelude began in June of 2025 when the United States launched Operation Midnight Hammer, the largest B-2 operational strike in American military history. 7 stealth bombers flew east from Whiteman Air Force Base, crossing the Atlantic, refueling in flight multiple times over 18 hours, and converging on 3 of Iran's most fortified nuclear installations, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. The weapon they carried was equally historic, the GBU-57A-B massive ordnance penetrator, a 30,000-pound GPS-guided bunker buster developed specifically to penetrate over 200 feet of earth or reinforced concrete, had never once been used in combat before that night. On June 22, 2025, 14 of them fell on Iran's nuclear program. The Pentagon's subsequent assessment found that the strikes had set back Iran's nuclear capability by approximately 2 years. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi himself admitted the nuclear sites had sustained severe damage. The bomb that the world had feared would one day have to be used had finally been used, and it worked. But the story did not end there. It never does in the Middle East. Iran's regime, battered and humiliated, did not collapse. It recalculated. It dispersed. It began reinforcing its ballistic missile infrastructure, the weapons it saw as its remaining instrument of regional leverage, its ability to hold American allies hostage across the Persian Gulf. Intelligence assessments in the months that followed showed Iran accelerating work on underground missile tunnel systems, stockpiling advanced munitions, and reorganizing the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps after the losses it had absorbed. The regime was wounded, but it was not finished. And in Washington, that distinction mattered enormously. By early 2026, the confrontation had reached a new threshold. Diplomatic efforts led by Oman had produced what one foreign minister called a breakthrough, Iran signaling willingness to cap its enriched uranium stockpile and accept full IAEA verification. But those signals were contradicted by the regime's own negotiators, who reportedly insisted on Iran's inalienable right to enrich uranium and boasted that its existing stockpile of 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium could theoretically yield 11 nuclear warheads. The United States had offered Iran free nuclear fuel in perpetuity in exchange for zero enrichment. Tehran refused. By February 19, 2026, American military assets in the Middle East had reached a level of concentration not seen since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Then came the intelligence that changed everything. American and Israeli intelligence services had identified something rare, a window. Senior Iranian leadership, including Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei himself, would be gathered simultaneously at locations that could be struck in a coordinated first wave. It was a moment that military planners described as once in a generation. On February 27, 2026, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu called President Trump to relay the coordinates. At 3:38 in the afternoon Eastern Time, traveling aboard Air Force One over Texas, President Trump gave the order to proceed. What happened next was warfare at a scale and precision that defied comprehension. In the first 12 hours of what the Pentagon codenamed Operation Epic Fury, and Israel called Operation Roaring Lion, the United States and Israel conducted nearly 900 strikes against targets across Iran. 200 Israeli Air Force jets hit approximately 500 targets in a single day. Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired from submarines lurking silently beneath the Gulf. F-35 and F-A-18 Super Hornets swept in to neutralize air defense batteries. And once again, from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, the B-2 Spirits lifted into the night sky. 4 of them, tracked by open-source analysts monitoring air traffic control frequencies under the call sign Petro 41, flew a round-trip mission from the continental United States to Iran's hardened ballistic missile facilities. Armed this time with 2,000-pound precision-guided bunker busters, they struck Iran's underground missile storage complexes with surgical accuracy. Satellite imagery released in the aftermath showed collapsed tunnel entrances at Tabriz North Missile Base, the openings to Iran's underground missile cities, where cruise missiles, mobile launchers, and stockpiles of advanced munitions had been housed, now sealed beneath thousands of tons of rubble. U.S. Central Command posted on social media what amounted to a declarative statement to the world. No nation should ever doubt America's resolve. But it was the first wave of strikes, the Israeli strikes, that delivered the blow the world had not anticipated. Senior Iranian security officials were killed in the opening hours, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commander, the defense minister, and the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. And then, confirmed by Iranian state media itself, by Trump on Truth Social, and by multiple intelligence sources, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the 86-year-old cleric who had ruled the Islamic Republic for more than 3 decades, was dead. Iran announced 40 days of national mourning. An interim leadership council was hastily convened under the terms of the Iranian constitution. The regime, for the first time in its existence, was operating without the man who had defined it. The Iranian response was fierce but disorganized, the response of a system in shock. The IRGC launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and thousands of drones at targets across the region, U.S. bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Turkey. Iran fired at least 162 missiles at Israel and 167 at the UAE alone. 46 struck Qatar. The Strait of Hormuz was temporarily disrupted, threatening global oil supplies. Iranian drones struck near the Burj Al Arab in Dubai and caused a fire at the Jebel Ali port. A drone reached Britain's Akrotiri military base on Cyprus. 3 American service members were killed and 5 seriously wounded. But American and Allied air defenses, hardened and upgraded in the years prior, absorbed and intercepted the vast majority of what Iran fired. The U.S. Navy remained fully operational. No American warships were struck. Iran's response, for all its ferocity, did not change the strategic equation. What the Iranian leadership was confronting was not merely the physical devastation, though that was staggering. It was the collapse of the deterrence architecture the regime had spent 40 years constructing. The logic of that architecture was simple: build deep enough, fortify enough, threaten widely enough, and no adversary would pay the price of war. The B-2 Spirit had dismantled that logic twice in 9 months. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator had reached depths that Iranian engineers had believed were unreachable. And now the ballistic missile tunnels, Iran's backup deterrent, its insurance policy, its second strike, lay buried under collapsed mountainsides. The strategic reverberations spread immediately across the region. The Gulf Cooperation Council convened an emergency meeting. Egypt declared full support for the Gulf states. Russia's Vladimir Putin called the killing of Khamenei a cynical murder. China demanded an immediate end to hostilities. But the most significant political rupture was occurring inside Iran itself. Reza Pahlavi, son of the last Shah, called on Iranians to rise and reclaim their country. Iranian diaspora communities in Los Angeles and across Europe poured into the streets, not in mourning, but in celebration. Members of the IRGC were surrendering by the thousands, with Trump publicly offering complete immunity to those who laid down their arms. The regime's internal coherence, already eroded by years of economic collapse and mass protest, was fracturing in real time. The B-2 spirit did not simply strike Iran. It struck the idea that the Islamic Republic was immune to consequence. For 47 years, the regime had chanted death to America and exported violence through proxies across 4 countries, all while sheltering behind the belief that American restraint was permanent, that the price of direct confrontation would always be judged too high. 2 operations, Midnight Hammer and Epic Fury, answered that belief with 30,000-pound bombs and precision-guided munitions delivered from aircraft that traveled halfway around the world and returned before most of the world knew they had left. The era of Iranian strategic invulnerability is over. What replaces it, whether a new Iran or a prolonged campaign, remains to be written. But the B-2 has already written the first chapter, and Tehran is still counting the cost.